back to the past, I guess, back to our original. Welcome to Cars on Call, by the way. This is automotive journalist Steve Schutson here with trauma surgeon Stephan Moran. We don't have Adams. He's out of town. He's unavailable. So, Stephan, it's like old times.
Hey, man, just like back to the beginning, but did you look at my picture here and the audio? Do you notice a little difference?
If I didn't know better, I'd say it was your house, but it can't be your house because you don't have Wi-Fi.
Well, I have entered the 21st century. What is this, episode 69?
68.
So I've spent 68 long episodes foraging for Wi-Fi like a vagrant going from house to house in my gypsy bus. And finally, we got true fiber into the house today. And I didn't know electrons could truly travel so fast. When I do a Google search or anything, it's absolutely amazing. So yeah, sitting here in my office, got my little automotive pictures in the background and some NASCAR stuff. Very excited to be doing this from home. And so, yeah, two things. One, it was such a pleasure for my wife to call HughesNet satellite, which was like HughesNet 0. It was like worse than dialing up with a 14.4K modem. So, of course, the retention department goes through everything they can think of to try to get you to stay. They dropped the price. It is, and she said, listen, we got fiber optic today, and we went from a Yugo to a Lamborghini. And she told the guy, and he started laughing. He said, got it. Thank you very much. And that was the end of the conversation. But that's exactly what we've done.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, yeah. Listen, enjoy your Lamborghini. Let me go through what we're going to talk about because we've got some interesting topics. We do have a shit Georg Kacher wrote, which we're going to talk about, and we've got some Porsche news, EV delays to talk about in the Porsche world. You've got safety to talk about, and I know that EV safety is something that this is something that you've been dying to talk about, and today you're going to hit on it. And then we've got a lot about the Monaco Grand Prix. But listen, Stephan, before we get to that, you told me you got something to say about Ford. And if I'm not mistaken, Stephan, it's not all positive.
Yeah, listeners, for those of you who've been listening to the show, you know that I beat the shit out of GM and I praise Ford and Jim Farley all the time, except for when he genuflected to the altar of Elon Musk a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I got to go on a rant here. And so for listeners, remember, hey, like, listen, subscribe, tell all your people, all your friends, leave some comments. But anyway, if you listen earlier, I had an incident on the interstate where I hit some riprap on the interstate with my Mustang.
You talked about this, your bullet Mustang,
my bullet Mustang,
and there was a huge rock in the road.
Yes, and it sent me flying through the air, broke both rims, broke some shocks, put me into spin. But thank goodness I've been to the Porsche driving experience and I was able to correct that spin at 70 miles an hour without running into this safety catch wire fence to the left. Anyway, 2.5 months later, I finally get my car back. Of course, the insurance company didn't want to buy original Ford parts. Like, how are you going to find how are you going to get 2 replacement rims for a Bullet Mustang? They're limited edition. Everything on that car is limited edition. The parts were some GT350 parts on the suspension. It had the Magna Ride. Anyway, long story short, I go to pick up, the guy calls me, and I've been checking on the car like week. He says, hey, it's ready. I go to pick it up.
And this is at your dealership, right? Your local Ford dealership.
Little local Jasper, Bill Penny Ford in Jasper, Alabama. So I go in my truck, and of course, I've got a tape measure in my truck. I go out and say, hey, let's measure the right side hub to hub and the left side hub to hub. After he tells me the car is ready, he said they put it on the rack and they aligned it. Everything's fine. 7/8 of a difference on the right side, shorter than the left side. So that's hub to hub. So, of course, I'm really pissed off because they told me the car was ready. I told them they need to measure it, and they told me everything was fine. Well, then they start backtracking, and the service manager comes in, Ben, and says, oh, no, it was premature of my assistant to let you know that it wasn't ready. And I said, well, so what are we going to do? He says, we'll put it back on the rack, and we'll take a look. He calls me and says, yep, something's not right with the subframe. We're going to send it to Bill Penny Collision Center in Huntsville, which is the state-of-the-art collision center up in Huntsville, gigantic. They've got
2 hours
all the machines. Yeah, exactly. Hour and 40 minutes away. So they flatbedded up there. I called the guy a week later and he said, we just got your car off the rack. He said, before we took all the body panels off, that's how they have to do it on a frame to measure the frame. So we decided to go ahead and check the alignment. He said, your car was so far out of alignment. And he said, we got the numbers from Bill Penny, and their numbers aren't even close to what they said it was. And I called, and Scott from Huntsville said, I called up Ben and Jasper and said, Ben, there's something wrong with your Hunter machine. You need to get it recalibrated. Because funny, I just had a customer came in that said we aligned her car and we made it worse. So then, yeah,
that's a sign.
That's a sign. No kidding. So I was really pissed because now, I thought my car was bent. It's not bent. I had my car look for 10 days. Now check this out. So I said, this is on a Friday. I said, I want you to go pick up my car on a flatbed at Huntsville or let them bring it to you. I don't want it being driven down here. And he goes, oh, well, we can't afford it. We're not going to pay that. We can send a driver up there. I said, no, I'll tell you what, I'll let you know on Monday what I want to do with the car. If I'm going to go get it or if I'm going to have you get a driver. Monday morning, my wife and I get in the car. I'm working up in Athens, which is an hour 25 away. And we're going to go by Huntsville to drop me off to pick up the Bullet. So I send Scott a text in the morning. Hey, on the way up. Of course, my phone goes into focus mode in the car, which you should have from a safety standpoint. But I decided all of a sudden to look at my phone anyway. I wonder if I heard from Scott. Scott says, hey, your car's not here. I said, what? He said, your car's not here. They picked it up on Sunday. I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me. So Ellen and I turn around. Now we'd gone, I'm telling you, 25 minutes due north of the direction we need to be going. So this added another 50 minutes to get back to Jasper, which is 30 minutes the other way. I show up there and I'm like, Ben, I said, I didn't authorize you to pick up my car. You didn't tell me you picked up my car. And I said, I'm not happy about this at all. He says, well, you can tell I'm really busy here, but they called us and one of our drivers said he was in Huntsville. He could pick up your car. I thought I was doing you a favor. I said, it's 9 o'clock in the morning, Ben. You didn't call me. I didn't call you. And
as soon as he found out the driver was up there, he should have called you.
Yeah, he had my cell phone number. So
right.
Anyway, so that's not the only thing I'm pissed off about Ford at. Anyway, so our former guest, Andrew Clark, who is Continuity Cable, great guy. He's got the hot rodded Bug. He's building a Jeep. He's making his own Overlander van that's a Ford. Well, he decides he's got the hots for a 24 Ford Ranger Raptor. And you remember, it's just a badass truck. It's the right size.
Yeah, they've got the first one was the F-150 Raptor, which was it's a great truck. Good luck getting one of those, especially if you want the Raptor with the red R, the Raptor
right.
R. And then it was the Raptor Bronco. So this would be the third one.
Yep, third one. So Andrew wants it, and it's going to come out in 24. So he called Stivers Ford, or it might be Stivers Ford in Birmingham. And so this is a $60,000 with all the options. He's getting the cool stuff. The sticker is $60K. Okay.
On what's think? Basically a $30,000 truck. So this is a cheap truck, and they're gussing it up, and they're basically
it's a little more than gussing it up, dude.
Doubling the price. Yeah,
but so it's $60K. Okay. What do you think Stivers Ford wanted over sticker for market added value?
I'm afraid to ask.
$20,000.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Jim Farley be pissed. I mean, remember he
33% markup?
Yeah. And think about that. I mean, Jim Farley said that's why he wants to sell through Blue Ford, the new electric division of Ford. He can cut the dealer out. Here's more proof of the pudding. So he calls Bill Penny, where I just got my Mustang fixed. They wanted $5,000 over sticker. And then Woody Anderson in Huntsville, Alabama said, what? It's $5,000 over sticker, but we're ordering the one we want to put on our showroom, and you can take it or leave it. How about that? What kind of?
Can't even. So you for the pleasure of paying $5,000 over sticker, you have to get a spec that they make, that they choose.
I mean, what kind of ass hattery is that? Okay, so then he finally found
unbelievable.
New South Ford in Meridian, Mississippi, agreed to let him order exactly what he wanted, and they charged him $5,000 over sticker, but. I thought about calling Gary Duncan. Hey, Gary, are your Ford dealers going to charge $5K over? Because on the show, for you listeners, Gary Duncan owns a bunch of dealerships and he's a big JDM guy. And on the show, he talked about they typically don't charge over MRSP unless it's super, super special. But I think calling a Ford Ranger or Raptor super, super special is, I think, pushing the limits.
No, in automotive news, we talked about this actually on the show that Gary Duncan was on. Automotive news talked about what happens when you charge over a sticker, and two things happen. Number one, a large percentage, I forgot what the percentage is, but a significant percentage of buyers say we will not buy that brand ever again. So if you charge extra for a Ford, people say I won't buy another Ford. And they also, a significant percentage, I think it's about a quarter to a third, a significant percentage around the same has say I won't buy that brand again. Will not go to that dealership for service. So you really turn off your customers. And I think you can turn customers off for a long time.
Yeah, it would. There's no way in hell I'd pay over MRSP for a car. It's not happening.
Here's a question for you, Stephan. Andrew's understandably unhappy. He's going to get a truck he wants, but he's going to get gouged on it. How interested are you in going back to Jasper Ford to buy another Ford?
I'll never go back there, ever.
Right. That's the problem.
My F-150 with 140,000 needs new shocks, new leaf springs, new bushings, transmission fluid change. It needs the igniters changed. I either do that or I dump it. I mean, I either spend about $6,000 or I dump it and keep it for another 100,000, which is probably what I'm going to do till I can get a Ranger Raptor without a 5K up mark in the price. But yeah, no way in hell am I going to Bill Penny Ford in Jasper, Alabama. It ain't happening.
Yeah, and let's be honest. If you sell a Raptor Ranger or a Raptor F-150 for sticker price, you as a dealer are making a lot of money.
Yeah.
You're making probably $10,000 profit if you sell it for MSRP. Certainly for the F-150, maybe it's $8,000 or $6,000 for the Ranger, but it's a lot of money you're making. And you know, you want to goose that up, and you want to me, it's short-term gain for long-term loss.
Yeah. And one last thing on this Ranger Raptor that I found interesting was because I've been pricing out a new F-150. So if you get the XLT, which is cloth interior, but pretty much option it out, you're up to around 55,000. If you get the Lariat completely stripped, which has leather interior, 0 options, not even a towing package, it starts at 60,000.
Wow.
So I look at that and
For
you look
Ranger.
at all that. Yeah, I mean, you get the Ranger R because you've got 7,000 pounds of towing capacity. I think it's 7,000, which is, I never tow anything more than 5,000 pounds anyway. So
damn. All right, moving on.
All right, moving on.
Shit, Georg Kacher says, and actually shit, Georg Kacher writes. So this
remind
really...
listeners new listeners who Georg Kacher.
Oh yeah, go ahead and tell them.
So listeners, Steve-O and I have been reading car magazines for a long, long time, but Georg Kacher is German and he writes primarily for Car Magazine. He writes for other magazines, but I think he is currently the single greatest living automotive journalist. And he tells it like it is. If he doesn't like a feature on a vehicle, he writes it in his articles, but they're extremely well written. He's not as snarky as the English or the British writers, but he does put some snarkiness in there and some comments to kind of dig in. But I really find his articles fascinating, and he's my favorite author, automotive journalist to read currently.
He is our favorite because I love him too. I love Car Magazine. I think it's fantastic. It's a British magazine, and so you can only get the English version. There's no U.S. version of Car Magazine, but Stephan and I read the UK version. The only thing I don't like about the Brits is, they're snarky. They're total homers.
Oh, they are complete homers.
Will not say anything bad about any English brand. The worst Jaguar, they're like, oh, it's unbelievable. It's incredible. Unbelievable. George is not like that. He's German, and he will say bad stuff about German cars. For example, he's talking about the upcoming 2024 BMW 5 Series. It's all new. And he says, quote, like the 7 Series, the upcoming 5 Series won't be quite as slippery as the wholly bespoke Mercedes EQS sedan. But then it won't look like a panda jellyfish on wheels either, unquote. Stephan, I saw one of those just last week, the EQS sedan. And I've talked about this before. The car lacks the presence of an S-Class I think it lacks the presence of Mercedes. I think it looks like an elongated and stretched Hyundai Sonata.
That or an early Kia, Elantra. It is ugly. I think I agree with you. It's completely terrible. Ugh. I think he's a good description. Squashed, what we say, squashed jellyfish.
Panda jellyfish on wheels.
Yeah, I mean, I like the interior, but it is.
I don't even know
ugly.
what is a panda jellyfish. It doesn't
I
matter.
have no idea, but it doesn't sound good. But maybe that's because they're two-tone or something. I don't know. But you're right. We've talked about the EQS, and I think that's well said. I mean, it's an interesting description, but that EQS is just butt ugly, man.
You also had some news, and there are significant Porsche delays. We have not talked about this, but I think it needs to be said. Making EVs is difficult, and it's difficult because of the batteries, the supply chain. It's a new
All right,
supply chain.
hold on. You say it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
But Elon Musk did it from scratch, dude. Okay? From scratch. So,
correct.
Yeah. I mean, Apple hasn't done it yet, but I mean, okay, so yeah, it's difficult. Everybody said it couldn't be done. Now, I also said he couldn't do satellites and rockets that land back on Earth. He did it, but so I think, they're just have the wrong technology pool. And like you said, your son Patrick, who is in coding, said, where do coders who don't know how to code go? The automotive industry. And apparently Volkswagen hired them all.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, my Patrick said if you're good at tech, you work for a tech company. If you're not good at tech, you work for a car company.
There it is. Okay, that's what he said.
We've quoted him a bunch of times because, of course, he's right. But here's some delays, and this is Georg Kacher wrote this, and we have not talked about it. But and I wish Adams were here to talk about this too. But Stephan, in 2019, Porsche said our all electric BEV Macan will be in production June of 2022. Well, here we are exactly a year later. It's still not under production. Now they're saying June or so of 2024. So a 2-year delay there. The Boxster and Cayman, they were supposed to be, when they were discussed and launched, they were supposed to be launched or start for sale in February of 2023. Now they're saying early to mid 2025, another 2-year delay. And then there's the 911, the next version, which again is going to be at least hybrid, probably plug-in hybrid. 2024 was when that was supposed to be. Now it's 2028. There's this Volkswagen Cariad, Cariad venture. It's a software venture, and that was supposed to solve everything. And again, hello, Patrick Schutz. Yeah, they can't get their shit together and they can't make the software. So 2-year delay for Macan, Boxster, Cayman, and a 4-year delay for the 911.
I'm going to be a little bit of a conspiracy theorist here, Steve-O. I think this is just a smart marketing move and a financial move on their behalf. Their ICE internal combustion engine cars are selling like gangbusters. People around the world are realizing that the holy grail is not the EV. There's pushback around the world from legislation pushing EVs in the marketplace. I think Porsche realized, just like Toyota says, these people are in way too much of a hurry to convert everything to electric. We're going to take our time, sell the shit out of our internal combustion engines. We'll develop an EV, but when it comes out, it's going to be completely set the world on fire. We're not rushing into this. We're not going to have cars that catch on fire. We're not going to have cars that crash with autonomous driving. I'm sure they said, hey, dudes, back off. We're going to get this right.
I think you may be right. I mean, here's the bottom line. I think companies I like the way you put that, Stephan. I think you're right. I was thinking that in the back of my mind. But how is this math so difficult? Let's stop. I mean, this is what they were saying when they're saying, all right, we're going to come up with a Boxster now. We're going to come up with the electric Macan now. Let's stop making vehicles we know make money, and let's start making money, or let's start selling vehicles that lose money.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And what you're saying is, they decided, maybe we'll keep making the cars that make money a little longer.
A little longer until we don't have a choice, and then, but we're going to develop those cars, but we're not going to change our factories. We're not going to dump all these employees. We're making monies on. Why would you quit making something that you can't even make enough of? but get them in development, start making them. But I know and really feel like they realize that all these regulations around the world are going to be pushed back, and everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. Yeah, by 2030 and by 2035, and come on, man. It realistically it's not getting there unless you're in a country like Norway where it's just financially basically impossible to own internal combustion engine vehicle.
Well, what Norway has is a mature infrastructure, and that's what we don't have.
Right.
So anyway, moving on. Actually, you have a safety thing to talk about with EVs. This is something, when you brought this up, Stephan, off the air, I had never thought about this. And as soon as you said it, I'm like, crap, that actually is a big deal.
So yeah, so listeners, a long time I did automotive research at University of Alabama with the Mercedes Siren Center back in the early 20s, and I had several ideas on how to improve automotive safety. And unfortunately, I looked at the patents; they were already patented. And Jack Roush, who's a friend and former patient of mine, he said, Stephan, good ideas are commonly thought of simultaneously. Don't give up; just keep working at it. But here's something that has already been thought of and people know. But once again, Kia and Hyundai, we love that company. They look great on the outside, but when they can find a way to make it a little cheaper inside, they go with the cheaper, or they don't have the components. Like my wife's Tucson, you still have to raise the hood manually, then swing the bar up to hold it up. Come on, man, put some hydraulic lifters on there. But anyway, there's a guy on called Technology Connections on YouTube, and I came across this video. He owns a 2022 Kia Ioniq 5, which is their EV, and he got to thinking. He said, some of these EVs, the rear brake lights don't basically function like I think they should be functioning. So he put GoPro cameras on the front and the back so he could see what his lights were doing. He said he first went out at night and then he put the GoPro cameras on there. But basically what he found was, now this is the US version. Okay, the brake light works fine, and actually in the federal motor vehicle safety standards are called service brakes, is what with the ones that are mechanically connected to the tires. Those are called service brakes. We found that when you're doing two pedal driving in the EV, gas pedal brake, that when you hit the brake lights come on in normal. But then the Ioniq 5 and a lot of manufacturers have what's called one pedal driving, where you never have to use the brake. You push it to go, you let go of it to stop, and it'll come to a complete stop if you don't have any your foot on the accelerator. So he found out that when he was in one pedal mode driving, he could be doing 60 miles an hour and take his foot completely off the accelerator, and with the regenerative braking, the car would come to a complete stop. And the deceleration. But it's
pretty heavy braking. I mean, it's not like it doesn't coast really, Stephan, right? I mean, this car really does brake.
13 seconds, it stopped to zero, which is, that's 13 seconds to come to complete stop. And he's like, shit, this is dangerous. This is a problem. And, think about it. So, and why is this a problem? Well, you shouldn't follow cars closely, but like I've talked a lot about on the show, our brain has certain expectations. It doesn't like to make new memories. We don't expect certain things to happen. A car slowing down rapidly in front of us, we are trained to see brake lights, okay? And I'm sure you come across a vehicle, a trailer without brake lights that's coming to a stop. You've come across some old beater that's coming to a stop that you didn't realize it was stopping. Well, think about that. This Kia EV does that. Now, interestingly, I'm going to give some applause to Chevy. When they came out with the original Bolt, they thought about this, and they actually put accelerometers in it, that in the regenerative braking, the accelerometers would turn on the brake lights. This is really a software fix. This is not an issue on Teslas. I did not research to see if it's an issue on Polestar. I imagine no in Volvo, they had this figured out, but this seems to be pretty unique so far to the Hyundai Ioniq 5, because there was another Hyundai dealer who spoke up, a Hyundai owner on Reddit who said his other EV that he has, I can't remember which one, doesn't do this. But this is kind of like the Kia boys, this is some little software glitch thing that they need to fix, and they need to get over, because this in my mind is going to be dangerous. And Technology Connection said he turned off one pedal driving on his Ioniq 5 because he thought it is unsafe and does not want to get rear-ended. I think they're going to be very open. I think there's going to be a class action. Anybody who rear ends a Kia right now, there's going to be a class action suit and they're going to write a check. This is a problem that they need to fix now. NHTSA is behind the time. Europe is addressing this. NHTSA has made a few suggestions for EVs and braking. They're not regulations. Once again, our bureaucratic wheels in this country move too slow. I don't know what the hell our politicians are doing.
Well,
They're just
NHTSA
moving
doesn't
too
have an
slow.
administrator right now, right? So that's a
Yeah,
problem.
yeah, no administrator at NHTSA. Yeah, how about that? That's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, listeners. So yeah, this is but DU did fix this gap in the law in March, and they basically said that any EV that decelerates under any mode greater than 1.3 meters per second squared has to have the brake lights come on. So
yeah, it's when I think about this, it obviously is natural that if you hit the brake pedal, that's going to actuate the brake light. And I never thought about what about regenerative braking, which it makes a lot of sense. Again, I hadn't thought about it. Thankfully, Tesla, Polestar, others have. But come on, guys, come on, Kia, give me a break.
Yeah, give me a break. This is a software thing, should basically be. Now, you don't want the brake lights. They just barely let off the gas. You don't want the brake lights, coming on, so for no reason, but clearly there's a software fix to mimic this human braking pattern that has been occurring since the Model T Ford. This is not complex stuff. But I don't know. They hired some of VW's software engineers. That may be the issue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It is funny. Yeah. Stephan, this is going to be a story that we're going to be talking about for years. Software in cars. And we've got this tension between Apple and Google, CarPlay and Android Auto. People like it, which is the only reason manufacturers are sticking it into their cars. They would just as soon not have Apple or Google anywhere near their cars, but people like it. They're used to it. They insist on it. Well, okay. And when you have an Apple or an Android car thing, you're happy with it because it works. And this is one more example of them saying they're being, possessive, and they're saying, no, we don't want to play. We don't want you in our sandbox. Well, they got a crappy sandbox.
And here's the other problem, and I've talked about this on previous shows, that we around the world now have an expectation that a company can release a piece of shit software called a beta version where you are experimenting with their software, finding the glitches, and then they fix it. Think about it. If you bought a TV that didn't work right, but they're going to keep fixing it, okay? But beta software in a car? Okay, no. That's the safety issue. You can't have betas, and that's what we're getting.
Well, that's where we can jump on Tesla, because they had beta autopilot. The first guy that was killed, famously, he ran into a tractor trailer. It was turning left in front of him. Car was on autopilot, and the autopilot, the camera thought that this tractor trailer was the sky and ran right into him. So that's a beta product there. So Tesla, shame on you.
Yep, exactly. I agree.
So Cariad, yeah. One of my sons actually went over to Germany and did some work with Volkswagen very recently. And before he went over, I said, yeah, there's a reason that they need you. They need your software, because their own software is basically they're basically ditching it and walking away. That whole Cariad thing turned out to be a total disaster. More
How
on
can
that
a company
later.
of that size, that volume, get it so wrong with with software? It's amazing to me.
Hubris, and I think that's the word, because they thought we can just get our dudes in and we can write software. And again, if they just listened to Patrick, they wouldn't have been arrogant, and they would have realized we're not going to get the best people as a car company. So
yeah, exactly.
We have to talk Monaco Grand Prix. We just had that Memorial Day weekend, and it was not a particularly good race this year. Obviously, Red Bull did well. Not Sebastian Vettel, but Max Verstappen won the race. But we have to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix because it's fucking awesome. We talked about the TT, the What is that, Stefan?
Isle of Man TT.
Levant TT. Yeah, exactly. How can I forget that? We talked about great stuff. Well, the history of Monaco and the Grand Prix. Regrettably, it's not a great race now. Hopefully, they'll make it great again. But it has an amazing history and some great moments. So I wanted to focus on that. And Adam's not a huge Formula One fan, so I thought let's do it when he's away. But Stefan, talk about the history, your favorite, just the history and the background and great moments that you think. Oh, we both wrote down 5 of our favorite great moments in the history of the Monaco Grand Prix. But just start us off because it's a hell of a race.
Let me tell you. So Monaco's been around for a long time. It's historic, and the prince and the princess and the movie stars and the rock stars, and there's so much wealth in Monaco. But there's 2 takeaways that I want to talk about the Monaco Grand Prix from this past weekend. First of all, Max and Red Bull are in a complete role. They're just crushing the competition. But here's something very interesting. If you go back, you can watch on YouTube. Max has really reached down there and grabbed a pair. If you watch his qualifying and his race performance, he is hitting the barriers. They kind of have these new foam barriers with some vinyl over it. I'd like to see Armco barriers with some foam on the backside. Okay, so you don't want to touch the barrier. He was clearly bouncing that Red Bull off those barriers, and he was
okay.
Running the limit.
Before you go, because I did notice that, and obviously Monaco is a place where really the only thing that matters is where you start the race. I mean, pole position is absolutely everything. So people are going to go for it during qualifying. Stefan, could this be a Chastain effect? Everybody in racing realized that, Ross Chastain won a NASCAR race, got into the chase last year by running on. He ran on the barrier because there's no penalty anymore. The barriers used to be hard. Now they're soft. You can bounce off them. Isn't this maybe a Chastain effect?
I like that. I never thought about that. Yeah, the old Chastain, the safer barrier Chastain effect, floors it, hits the barrier with the car floored and goes by on the outside. But I was, several people hit the barriers and ripped the vinyl off. But I want the guys to be safe. I don't want them to get hurt. But I don't like the idea that they can touch the barrier. The barrier should be the barrier, and there should be a consequence for hitting it.
Yeah, it used to be a consequence. Now it's an advantage.
It's an advantage. We talk about Monaco. So I actually found this year's race pretty impressive from the standpoint that the only way they could. So listeners, this race is too tight. This race is on a street circuit. It used to be great when the cars were small. Now, like everything else in America, it's all supersized. The cars are huge. And they really can't even pass, and except for a couple areas when somebody makes a mistake. But this race, we had rain, and rain is the great equalizer, man. It separates the boys from the men, the technicians, and the tacticians who decide when to come in for intermediates or full wets. So fortunately, we had rain, but it still was a parade, but it still made it interesting. And man, Esteban Ocon coming out and getting on the pole, getting second place with Alonso right behind. Chapeau bas to those guys, man. And then Hamilton, the other old guy, back and forth. So I found it interesting. I did like to see that Mercedes is coming back with their new side pods that are more like Red Bulls, which everybody has switched to. And the other two thing about Monaco that was very interesting was they have to have giant cranes, and the secrecy of a Formula One car is huge. They don't like anybody taking pictures and liking them, but both the Red Bull and George Russell's Mercedes had to be high lifted in the air on cranes. You could see all the photographers taking pictures of the bottoms of the car. So I think that was great. So yeah, interesting race. So let's so from a historical standpoint, I'm going to just talk about a few things that have made Monaco what they are. And I think it all got its huge start back in 1955. That picture everybody's probably seen somewhere. Former world champion Albert Ascari crashes into the harbor.
Into the water, yeah.
Into the water, right. He flew off the track into the water, right through the hay bales and everything. And that's, where else can you see a race where a car flies off the track into the water?
They should have had that as the agony of defeat on Wide World of Sports.
Yes. And and the greatest, so the other thing about the greatest thing about Monaco is it is such a technically difficult track that you have to be in a qualifier. You have to be very good at your qualifying lap, especially now. And then only that, you have to be able to do how many ever laps? I think this year was 86 laps. Basically, tires 1 millimeter off the sides of every barrier. And if you make a mistake, you crash and you're out. So a couple of famous champions, who got the title of Mr. Monaco? The one and only Graham Hill. He won in 1969 with 5 wins at Monaco, which is very impressive to win that many times at one track. And it was also
he and Senna, because they both that was like their playground.
Yep, exactly. I was going to get the Senna. But that was also Graham Hill's last Formula One win, and he was a hugely popular driver. And then one of the other thing that Monaco has very famous about it has been called what's his name, Murray Walker called the 1982 race the craziest race ever.
That's on my list.
Oh, okay. All right. I figured it had to be on your list. All right. Well, let me go. All right. Let's go. Yeah, I got some other famous champions and everything. Let me go back to. All right. So I'll let you talk about that one, because that one's just is great. But the other thing is drivers at Monaco reach down, they find a pair, they become one with the vehicle, and they have really transcendental moments or spiritual moments at the wheel. And Ayrton Senna is probably the one who everybody associates with Monaco. He won it 6 out of 10 times. He should have won it 7 times. But so 1984 is when, Monaco GP is when Ayrton really made a name for himself.
When he arrived.
The weather didn't hold back. It went to a light shower of rain, turned into torrential downpour. And this is where, and it was just raining like hell. And little whiny ass bitch, Max Verstappen's uncle, Alain Prost, is just, he's screaming into the radio, "It was too dangerous. We cannot drive. We must stop the cars. Please, Balester, stop the race." And it's over. And you know what? They did red flag the race because they loved Prost, man. So they red flagged the race. And Senna was ahead by 30 seconds.
He was catching him. He hadn't quite passed him, but they red flagged the race when Senna was very close. Senna was catching him. He had a crappy car. It was a Tolman, and Prost was in a McLaren, much better car. And Senna was catching him at 3 seconds per lap.
Yep. So Senna was going to take him and behind.
He was about to pass him. That is a crime. They should have never stopped that race.
So so Mr. Monaco is really Ayrton Senna, and so Ayrton Senna, just when that drive that he did there, he should have won it in 1988, but he crashed in 1988. He made a mistake. He was seconds ahead, but just classic to Ayrton Senna. He only knew how to drive one way, and that was at 100% of his ability, and he just couldn't back off. But he would have been, think about that, he would have been a 7-time winner.
He would have won the race. I like Alain Prost. I'm not a huge fan, but I do like the guy, and he was a great champion. He said after that race, Senna didn't want to beat me. He wanted to humiliate me. And I think that was true. And unfortunately, because Senna wanted to humiliate him and he wanted a bigger lead than he ended up getting, he tossed away a sure win.
Yeah, exactly. And, Senna on that day was quoted as saying, "On that day, I said to myself, that was the maximum for me. No room for anything more. I will never really reach that feeling again." And listeners, you can go on to YouTube and just type in Ayrton Senna and Monaco. They don't have anything from the 88, but they do have it from 90. And when you watch him driving Monaco with a helmet cam front car view, it's just pure insanity, because these are not like the cars of today. This thing is bouncing around, and it's just absolutely mesmerizing to watch.
They had around 1,000 horsepower, and these are cars that weigh maybe 1,000 pounds or something. And it's absolutely, the power to weight ratio is absolutely incredible. The danger is gigantic. There's very little safety in these cars. And his driving, I agree. You watch those videos, you just can't believe it.
So how do we make Monaco great again? Put some sprinklers on that track, man. If it doesn't matter if it's a sunshiny day, put water on it. That's the only way to have an interesting race at Monaco.
I think you're right. Unfortunately, they have to do something because it just is not interesting. It's all about pole position, and then it's very hard to pass. And with the smaller, more maneuverable cars that weren't as fast, less ground effects, it was an interesting race. Now with these really long cars that have incredible ground effects, and it's just very difficult to pass. It's a shame because the history is just incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So favorite moments.
I think I hit on some of them.
You definitely did. The qualifying video of Senna. I just have to talk about that again because he is absolutely on the edge for every second of that video, and he's going so fast you just can't believe it. And you can't. It's whenever I watch it, I think, how can a human being have reflexes that quick? But he does.
Yeah, and so for listeners, those of you that got the Formula One by Drive to Survive, watch the movie Senna. It is absolutely spectacular, and it's an emotional movie. But you get to see his driving, meet the man, and you'll understand why he is so revered in the world of F1. And it gives you a true introduction to what these guys are driving, putting their life on these line, these pilots behind these, the French call them pilots. They don't call them drivers, piloting these F1 cars, and to see Senna at Monaco and then to watch his movie, I think it'll make an enjoyable weekend for you.
Yeah. I'll come up with three of my favorite moments.
All right.
One is like bittersweet, kind of positive, negative. 1992 Mansell versus Senna. It's a very famous duel. Mansell had the better car. Mansell was a great driver, and somehow Senna got in front of him, and then he would not let Mansell by. And Mansell had like I said, a better car, but he just couldn't get past Senna, who drove very defensively and got the win. I would say Mansell deserved the win, but again, you don't pass the guy, you don't win.
Yeah, that's right. The second place is just the first loser.
Even though he had a better car. So that's one that really stood out because again, Senna really stole one there. And if he gave one away in 88, then he gave it back, or he got it back. Sorry for that one. 1996 was a crazy one. 3 cars finished, and Oliver Panis, his only win ever in Formula One, he won that race. But mechanical problems and crashes meant that only 3 cars finished.
That sounds like the Indianapolis Formula One of the tire wars.
95 or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever year that was.
The tire disaster.
3 cars finished. It sounds like a NASCAR, speed track.
It's a crazy moment. That was 96. 3 cars finished.
Wow.
And then I have to talk about 82 because I will watch this on YouTube. I've watched it like 20 times. I always go back to it. Because Riccardo Patrese won. It was an absolutely incredible.
But here's the best thing about that 1980 on YouTube, Steve-O, is Murray Walker was a broadcaster, and he called Formula One for years, and he had tremendous relationship with the drivers. There's all kind of Murrayisms. So the best part about watching this on YouTube, Steve-O, to me, is not only is the race great, but you get to hear Murray Walker going crazy.
It went completely crazy because Riccardo Patrese takes the lead, and Murray Walker's like, Patrese's going to win. All of a sudden, Patrese crashed. He's out of the race. Yeah. And of course, Patrese was not out of the race, but he should have been. And then Didier Pironi in Ferrari, he's going to win. And then he has some kind of mechanical. I think he ran out of gas, and all of a sudden in the tunnel he stops, so he's out. And then Derek Daly was going to win, and then Prost was going to win before any of this happened. I mean, this is in the last 2 laps. Prost was going to win in a Renault, and he crashes because it started to rain. That's what happened. They had slick tires in the rain. Patrese crashed in his Brabham in the rain, but he kind of kept his shit together. Peroni Mechanical Daily didn't have a wing on the back, and he was gonna absolutely win. And then his car just stopped running, and then Patrese actually ended up winning. But
because he reversed down the curb.
Yes.
And got his car to restart. So this thing about this, in the last 3 laps of this race, the top 4 cars all went out.
Yes.
I mean,
and one of them could restart.
And
he won.
And he won.
And James Hunt, very famously, he was the other announcer. He said, we're sitting here at the end waiting for a racer, waiting for a winner, and we don't seem to be getting one.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's
the most prestigious race of the calendar. It's YouTube Gold.
It's a shit show. It's a complete shit show. And you're right, it's YouTube Gold. Yeah, I gotta agree. That is I think that just sums up, that is Monaco in a nutshell. The craziness of Monaco that occurs when you throw a little bit of rain in the mix, and it turns a train into complete Indian chaos, So,
all right. Before we leave this, and we do have to end this, but before we do, my favorite memory of Monaco is more recent. It's about 10 to 12 years ago, and our favorite Finn, Kimi Räikkönen, crashed out of the race, and he gets out of his car, and he walks along the side of the track, and then goes literally to the water onto his yacht, and he's gone. He's got his fucking helmet on and his racing suit. He doesn't go back to the pits. He just walks onto his yacht. He's like, "See you later, bros."
Famous Kimi. He probably, if the reporter could have caught him, Kimi would reply, said, "Had to take a shit."
Had to take a shit.
Had to take a shit. That, for listeners, you can look that up on YouTube too. There's some of the funniest things in Formula One that came out of Kimi Räikkönen's mouth, man. He was just great.
Yeah,
nice,
it
man.
is. Speaking of great, we're missing the great Adams Hudson. So Adams, wherever you are, we miss you. We'll get you back next week. But that is all I have, my friend. I think that covers it.
Yeah, let me see if there's anything else on my notes here. I do want to mention, we talked about famous champions. I do want to mention Juan Manuel Fangio. So,
of course,
for you new fans of Formula One, you have to, Juan Manuel Fangio was my grandmother's hero in France as a driver. He's to me, he is the GOAT of the old era, and Lewis Hamilton is the GOAT of the new era.
I didn't realize he was French.
No, he's not.
Argentinian.
He's Argentinian, right? But the World Championship of Formula One began in 1950, and Juan Manuel's very first win, Formula One, Monaco, and he qualified on the pole by a margin of 2.6 seconds. He lapped the entire field, leading all 100 laps, and recorded the very first ever Grand Slam in Formula One. Pole, fastest lap, led every lap. And then he only raced there 4 times. He won 2, but he had 100% of the pole records and 100% of the fastest laps in those 4 races. The other 2, he went out on mechanical issues those 2. So
unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. I mean, that just shows you, that's just another example of Juan Manuel Fangio's greatness. And if you go to the Mercedes Museum in Germany, you can see his racing uniform, you can see his helmet, his gloves, his cars, and his trophies. So there's a wonderful section with Juan Manuel Fangio there.
Unbelievable. All right, close it out, man. We'll see everyone next week.
All right, everybody. Like, listen, subscribe, tell your friends, leave some notes, and leave some comments, and look for us with a new episode next week.